Real power doesn't need to scream. It doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't chase applause or dominate the conversation just to feel important. In fact, the loudest person in the room is often the one holding on by a thread, desperate to be noticed, desperate to feel in control, desperate to mask their own insecurity. Because when you're truly powerful, you don't need to prove anything. You walk in and the energy shifts. You speak less, and people lean in more. You make no noise, yet everyone listens. That's not weakness. That's real dominance. The world teaches you to fight loud, to argue your worth, to be seen and heard at all costs. But the truth is, silence cuts deeper than shouting. Stillness is more unnerving than rage. A calm man in a chaotic room is the one with real control, because he's not reacting. He's observing. He's calculating. He's already 10 steps ahead while others are wasting energy trying to look strong. Silence is not the absence of power. It's the signal that you already own it. You're not looking for validation. You're not desperate to convince anyone of your value. You know who you are. And in that knowing, you become immovable. When someone tries to provoke you and you don't flinch, you win. When they insult you and you don't react, you win. When they try to pull you into chaos and you choose to remain calm, you win. Because the person who controls their emotions controls the entire dynamic. Anyone can yell. Anyone can throw punches, verbal or physical. That doesn't take strength. But to sit still, to say nothing, to watch with full presence while others unravel, that's a level of mastery most never reach. And that's why silence is feared. That's why calmness feels threatening. Because deep down, everyone knows that the one who doesn't need to prove himself is the one with the upper hand. You don't need to dominate the room. You need to dominate yourself. And when you do that, you become unshakable. You intimidate without trying. You influence without speaking. You lead without force. That's how you win without fighting. That's the silent strategy that works. You never win the fight by fighting harder. You win by deciding what the fight is really about. Most people get dragged into other people's games, other people's emotions, other people's definitions of power. But the smartest ones, the ones who win silently, they don't play that way. They control the frame. And the frame is everything. It's the lens through which others see the situation. It's how you define the moment before anyone else gets a chance to. And once you own the frame, you don't have to fight. You already won. If someone tries to disrespect you, provoke you, pull you into an emotional war, your reaction decides the frame. React with anger, and they've got you. Stay calm, look through them, and suddenly they're the ones performing. You flipped the frame. They wanted chaos, but now they look weak. Because when you don't dance to their rhythm, the music dies. People can't control what they can't predict. And when you're not reactive, when you don't get pulled into their narrative, you're controlling the temperature, the tone, the direction. This works everywhere, in business, in relationships, in conflict. The person who defines what's really happening without saying much owns the room. You don't argue. You don't justify. You set the tone just by how you sit, how you look, how you breathe. It's not about what's loud. It's about what's firm, what's grounded, what's unfazed. They say something wild. You say nothing. Just raise an eyebrow. That's control. They try to offend you. You laugh like it's beneath you. That's control. They challenge your power. You simply walk away because your presence alone was already the answer. That's control. You're not avoiding the fight because you're afraid. You're ignoring it because it's irrelevant. You've moved the battlefield. You've made it a game they can't even play. Control the frame, and you no longer have to fight for dominance. People give it to you unconsciously because energy doesn't lie. When your energy says, "This is nothing to me," you remove their power. Every time you refuse to be baited, you shift the story. Every time you act like you already know who you are, the game ends before it begins. This is how you win without swinging. This is how you win without raising your voice. You don't fight harder. You control the narrative. And that, right there, is the real victory. Attachment makes you weak. The more you need something to work out a certain way, the more control it has over you. The moment your peace depends on someone else's approval, someone else's response, someone else's behavior, you've already lost. Detachment isn't about not caring. It's about caring deeply but staying rooted in your own power regardless of the outcome. When you master detachment, you move like someone who can't be manipulated. You speak calmly because you're not desperate to convince. You walk away easily because you know your worth doesn't change based on who stays. And you stay in control because your emotions don't rise and fall with someone else's actions. That's power. People will try to pull you into their storms. They'll throw bait, insults, pressure, silence, attention, just to see if you'll bite. But when you're detached, nothing moves you. You observe without reacting. You feel without becoming consumed. You let them play their games while you sit back and choose your moment. Detachment is the ability to look at a situation and say, I want this, but I don't need it. That single mindset shift flips everything, because when you don't need it, you stop chasing, you stop begging, you stop controlling. And ironically, that's when it comes to you, because people gravitate toward those who radiate inner stability, those who don't flinch under pressure, those who don't overreact or over-explain. The one who is detached becomes the magnet. It's not cold. It's centered. It's not passive. It's composed. You don't win by clinging. You win by standing still and letting the noise fall away. You watch people panic while you breathe slow. You hear their insults, their silence, their manipulation, and it lands nowhere, because your sense of peace is not up for negotiation. When you're detached, you own yourself. Your energy says, I'm not here to win you. I'm here to stay in alignment. That's intimidating to those who live off control, but it's liberating to you. You're not chasing anymore. You're choosing. You're not desperate for outcomes. You're focused on your inner position, and that makes you unbreakable. The storm doesn't shake you when you've built your roots deep, and detachment, real, unshakable detachment, is what keeps your roots buried in bedrock. You walk through fire, and you don't burn. You watch doors close, and you don't beg. You see people leave, and you don't collapse, because you were never clinging. You were always choosing. That's how you win without fighting. You master yourself. You let go of the need to control, and in doing so, you become the most powerful one in the room. While everyone else is busy talking, performing, seeking validation, you stay silent and build. You gather strength in the shadows. You learn in silence. You grow when no one is watching. That's the strategy of people who don't just win once. They win for life. Leverage is not built in noise. It's built in discipline. It's built in the quiet hours when no one is applauding, when no one is paying attention, when you're stacking skills, knowledge, power, piece by piece. And the best part? No one sees it coming. While they were too busy trying to win the crowd, you were mastering the game. They were loud, you were strategic, they were visible, you were inevitable. Power built in silence is the most terrifying kind because it arrives without warning and can't be stopped. You don't need to announce your next move. You don't need to prove you're rising. You just keep rising until the difference is undeniable. You walk back into the room months later and suddenly everything has changed. You look different. You speak different. You think different. And no one knows how or when it happened. That's leverage. Silence protects your momentum. Talking drains it. When you broadcast your every move, you invite resistance. You expose yourself to sabotage. You dissipate your energy. But when you move in silence, the pressure is gone. You're not living to impress. You're building to dominate. And when the moment comes to act, to speak, to take your position, you're ready. You've prepared in private. You've suffered in silence. You've earned what you're about to take. Most people try to fight for position they haven't earned. They argue for attention they haven't worked for. But you've done the work. You've sacrificed. You've built something real under the surface. That's why you don't need to fight. You let your results speak. You let your calm presence shake them. You let your unexpected excellence do the talking. The ones who build leverage in silence are the ones who walk into rooms and change the atmosphere without saying a word. They don't flex. They don't perform. They exist differently, and that difference is impossible to ignore. That's how you win without fighting. You work while others talk. You prepare while others party. You stack leverage until you don't need permission, until you don't need attention, until you don't need to argue. Because by the time you move, the room already knows. You're not one of them. You're beyond them, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. Power isn't proven by how long you stay. It's proven by how confidently you walk away. Most people stay too long in arguments, too long in bad relationships, too long explaining themselves, justifying their value, begging to be seen. But when you know your worth, you don't chase closure. You don't fight for a seat at a table you could flip with one hand. You don't scream to be understood. You simply rise and leave. Because real power doesn't ask to be respected. It removes itself from disrespect. And when you do that, you change the dynamic instantly. You send a message louder than any argument could ever deliver. The one who walks away owns the frame. The one who walks away owns their peace. The one who walks away never loses. They simply refuse to engage in battles beneath them. Understand this. Not everything deserves your energy. Not every insult deserves a reaction. Not every room is worth staying in. When you know what you bring, you stop begging people to recognize it. You walk away not to punish, but to protect your frequency, to preserve your dignity, to prove to yourself that your value isn't up for negotiation. And here's the truth that shakes people. They never expect you to actually walk. They expect drama. They expect resistance. They expect noise. But when you stay calm, steady, unbothered, and you simply leave, it rattles their entire foundation, because your silence forces them to face what they've lost. No anger, no last words, just absence. And absence, when delivered with quiet certainty, is the loudest message of all. It says, I am enough without this. It says, you no longer have access to my energy. It says, I choose myself over chaos. And that kind of walk away doesn't burn bridges. It builds boundaries. It doesn't end relationships. It ends power struggles. You don't fight to be heard. You become so still, so resolved, that your presence, or your lack of it, says everything. Walking away isn't weakness. It's mastery. It's knowing that the strongest position is not always standing your ground. It's knowing when the ground isn't worth standing on. And when you carry that kind of energy, you win long before the battle even starts. You don't win because they lose. You win because you've already outgrown the game. When chaos erupts, most people flinch. They panic. They react. They get pulled into the fire with shaking hands and loud voices. But the rare ones, the ones who win without raising their fists, don't move like that. They don't fight the chaos. They become the calm inside it, and that changes everything. Because when you stay calm, you become the center of gravity, the eye of the storm. While everyone else spins out, loses control, screams to be heard, you stand still. You breathe slowly. You see clearly. And in that moment, everyone starts reacting to you. Calm is control. Calm is power. Calm is the silent force that makes people stop and watch. It's not passivity, it's presence. It's the signal that you are untouchable, not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing can shake your foundation. This is how you win without lifting a finger. You don't chase validation. You don't collapse under pressure. You don't let fear guide your actions. You simply stay grounded. Your silence becomes the loudest thing in the room. Your stillness becomes a mirror that exposes the instability of everyone else. And suddenly, without fighting, you win. Because power isn't about domination. It's about regulation of your emotions, your energy, your presence. The calm one always has the advantage. They see what others miss. They wait while others rush. They act when it actually matters. And when they do, everything shifts. This kind of power doesn't need approval. It doesn't need to be loud. It walks in quietly and takes over everything. You become the one people look to for direction without you saying a word. You become the one who ends arguments just by entering the room. You don't command respect, you attract it. Because your calmness says you've already faced storms and didn't flinch. You've already fought battles inside yourself and won. So now, outside chaos doesn't scare you, it doesn't tempt you, it can't reach you. You've become the anchor. You've become the steady hand in a world of shaky ones. And that is how you rise. That is how you win. No noise, no fight, just unshakable presence. You are no longer moved by the chaos. You move through it. And when others finally realize that, it's already too late. You've already won.